Hey guys, how is everybody doing? This has been something I've been wanting to do for a while. There's no specific reason why I'm doing it. There's not a new movie coming out, but I have decided to go ahead and review all nine Nightmare on Elm Street movies, which is a very important franchise for me and the horror community. Before I give you my thoughts on The Nightmare on Elm Street, this is a very important movie for me. The original Nightmare on Elm Street was one of those horror movies where I rewatched over and over and over. And at one point, I got sick of it and I didn't watch it for like 3 years or something like that. I love A Nightmare on Elm Street. It's one of my favorite movies. It's one of my favorite horror movies. When I was a tiny little child, there was this little place called Hastings, which is now sadly closed. I still fucking hate my town for closing it. I don't understand why. I remember it like it was yesterday. My mom took me to the Angry Birds movie in the theaters, and then during the movie, she leans towards me and goes, "Hey, do you want to go to Hastings after the movie?" I was so excited. I was like, "Come on, get this movie over. I want to go to Hastings." And then when we went to Hastings, now, I started watching horror at a very young age. I've told this story before. I had the Chucky movies, I had the Leprechaun movies, and I already knew about a lot of these horror icons. I knew about Jason, I knew about Michael, I knew about Chucky, Leprechaun, and Freddy. But I never knew the title of the names. All I knew is that it was just Freddy and Jason. I always thought that the title of their movies would be Jason or Freddy because of the Chucky movies. Because, like, my first Chucky movie was Curse of Chucky, had his name in the title, and I always thought that's what the horror movie would do. But then when my mom took me to Hastings, we did a little exploring, and I came upon A Nightmare on Elm Street. And when I just looked at the cover, I'll probably have an image up here so you can see what the cover exactly that I saw. And I saw Freddy Krueger on there. I was like, "Holy shit, that's the Freddy movie I want to watch." And then my mom's like, "Yeah, I can get him." And then to my surprise, I saw one, two, four, and five. In that order. I didn't have three at the time. And I was like, "Mom, I want to get these." And at the time, she went, "I don't have enough money for that. And I don't think you need all of them." And I was like, "No, Mom, I need these movies. I need to have these." And she's like, "Fine." And I wanted to watch them so badly, but she was being a dick and made me go to my aunt's house. And then I passed out. And then the next morning, I had to watch it. And she tried to call my dad to make me go watch it over there. But my dad's also a dick, and he wouldn't let me watch it here. Asshole. And then when I finally got to watch A Nightmare on Elm Street, it blew my fucking mind. That's all I have to say. All out of the way, here are my positives on A Nightmare on Elm Street. First positive is that I want to just talk about the concept of this movie. It's where all of these kids on a street called Elm Street, which, ironically, and where they have these nightmares about a man wearing a red and green sweater, a razor glove, a glove that has knives on it, but they're saying it's long fingernails, and a fedora. But they all just think it's just a dream. But this girl named Tina, she starts to have these weird dreams and believes that they're real. And then she's scared to even sleep. And then they're trying to like help her out and make sure it's all a dream. None of this is real. None of this is gonna happen. But then all the shit breaks loose where this man is tormenting them in their dreams, and whatever happens in your dreams happens in real life because this whole movie is where he's killing them in their dreams, where if they die in their dreams, they're dead in real life. Like, say, they get stabbed in their dreams by him, they'll wake up and there will be stab wounds and they'll be dead. And I also love finding out the history about this movie. Wes Craven, who directed this movie, who I have reviewed some movies about him. I reviewed the first four Scream movies back when Scream 6 came out. I plan on reviewing others, but as of right now, those are the only ones, and this one. And where he came up with the concept about this movie after finding out about like an Asia culture where a little boy was having trouble sleeping. He kept having nightmares and he refused to sleep because he said if he went back to sleep, he would keep having these nightmares and he wouldn't be able to get any sleep. And so he refused to sleep, but his parents would not listen to him and they gave him basically this drug to help him sleep. And he kind of refused to take it, but they made him take it, and fell asleep. And then when they put him to bed, when he was sleeping, he started wiggling around, making noises, like screaming, like half to death. But when they got to him, he was dead. Like he died while in his sleep. And Wes Craven found out about that back in like a while ago, and he came up with that concept. It's a very scary thing that's actually happened. Like when you think about it, you can die in your sleep. Like some people actually have died in their sleep, which is very tragic. But especially hearing about that little boy's death, about him dying in his sleep and his parents not listening, it's tragic, and they also plays a part in this movie where the parents aren't listening to their kids because they believe they're basically crazy or just having bad dreams, and where they think they're just having bad dreams or where they believe that they're real. It's very interesting and it's terrifying when you think about it. Like the parents, they can't help them, and they just won't listen to them. So it's up to the kids to fight for themselves. That's a great concept, and due to the late great Wes Craven, only he was the only person to able to come up with a fucked up story like that. I really like the characters in this movie. You got Rod, Tina, Freddy. You got fucking Nancy Thomas, what? Nancy Loomis, what? Nancy. That's all. Nancy Thompson. Jesus. And then you also got the boyfriend, Johnny Depp's character. I forget his name. All I know is played by Johnny Depp. I love these characters. They're all interesting. Hell, I even love the Marge character. A lot of people don't seem to like her, which I understand because she can be a bitch and she's basically an alcoholic. Seriously, watch this entire movie. She's just fucking pouring down vodka. Like, holy shit, dude. All these characters are likable. That's what I miss about slashers from the slashers today and horror movies in general today. There's no likable characters. They're all douchebags, assholes, where they're just on their cell phones and iPads. But when you look about slasher characters back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they were all likable and lovable. Like you rooted for them. Like yeah, fucking get them. But nowadays you're like, kill them. I don't give a fuck. But in these movies, you're like, I want these guys to live. I want to see them fucking fight back. There's only one character I was like, "Mm," and that's Johnny Depp's character because he keeps fucking up in this movie. Nancy keeps telling him to stay awake to help her out. What does he do? Yeah. Mm. I love these characters. They're great, and I love seeing Nancy come return throughout this entire franchise. That she's a great final girl. A lot of people don't talk about her. Why? Heather Langenkamp as Nancy Thompson. She is great. I feel she gets overshadowed by fucking Jamie Lee Curtis, Sigourney Weaver. There's probably others that I'm thinking about, but she always gets overshadowed by like other people, and I go, what the fuck, man? What about Heather Langenkamp? She is great in this role. She is great as Nancy Thompson. I fucking love her. Hell, she does practical effects for a living. Her husband is a person that works on horror movies and does practical effects, and she works with him. That's why she's also cool. A lot of slashers usually have great kills, but this one really had a standout in my mind where the kills were great. You got Tina's character, where I thought was a very cool effect the way they achieved Tina's death, is where they made a spinning room where they could spin the room and they stapled and glued everything down on it. And then they would spin it to get that super real effect to make her like go along the wall on top of the roof and all that. And what's great about that kill, just in general, is that Freddy makes it look like a murder, not from him, because he rips open her like shirt and then cuts her chest, and then just flings her around and leaves blood everywhere and make it look like a murder. And he kind of sets up Rod to make him look like the murderer, so he can get to him easily. That's how great that kill is, where it's not just gory, it's not just creative, but it also makes you, and he also sets somebody up because he doesn't want to be like, oh, she just like did something in her sleep, like something killed her in her sleep or something like that. But no, he sets up to be Rod because yeah, Switchblade earlier. If you watch that scene, that's a great synopsis in how they do it. Like Rod's death is not creative. It's not very creative, but he makes it set up like a suicide since he's in jail because he is a suspect for the murder of Tina, because he was set up, like I said. But the way he does it, where he wraps up a bed sheet around his neck and then pulls him and then hangs him to make it look like he killed himself. But where that's not a great kill. It's not very creative, but that's why I like it because it like makes it set up like make it look like suicide. But the thing is about Johnny Depp's character, Glenn. That's his name, Glenn. Uh, how does that make it look like a suicide or a fucking like an accident? Because his death, like he passes out and Freddy's hand comes out of his bed and pulls him down in there, like sucks him in, and then all of a sudden this fucking geyser of blood just fucking comes out of the bed. Like what the fuck? Like what the shit is that? That's a really cool scene, by the way, and they use like that same spinning room they used for Tina's death, but they just reused it and for Glenn's death, and like you can actually see that some of the blood is kind of like trailing off to the side. That wasn't supposed to happen. Something apparently went wrong, and some people almost got really injured, nearly killed, filming that scene. But I will say, would have been worth it because it's awesome. Now, the final kill in this movie, I've always been confused by, and that's Marge's death. Where at the end of this movie, where he's on fire when Freddy's on fire in the real world, he's like strangling her or something, messing around with her. I don't know what the fuck he was doing. It looked like he was strangling her, or maybe just like taunting her. But then he gets knocked out by a chair. Give him the chair, and then puts out the fire, and then she turns into like this weird puppet thing, and then sinks into the bed. Huh. Really think the cast in this movie is great. You, like I said, you got Heather Langenkamp. Hell, if you're a Johnny Depp fan, this was his first movie. This was actually his first movie that he ever did, which is very surprising. And I didn't know that for a while until like 5 years ago. I found out. I was like, wait, that's Johnny Depp. Like when you watch a lot of Johnny Depp's movies, like he does something to his voice. He gets great makeup. Justice for Johnny Depp. Fuck you, Amber Turd. I love the cast in this movie. Hell, you got Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. And you got John Saxton from fucking Black Christmas. Rest in peace, you goddamn legend. I love this cast. The cast that we get here, they play their part. They do a damn good job, especially for Johnny Depp, for being his first movie. Now, I will say this. When it comes to actors' first movies, they usually don't do very good because they're still beginning and everything. But to me, Johnny Depp always pulls it off in this movie. But I do feel that of all of his performances, this might be his weakest. Because, like, come on, compared to a lot of other movies. Besides you, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Good. We gotta talk about the star of the show himself, Freddy fucking Krueger. He is probably my favorite horror icon. Him and Chucky, man, they always do this, man. It's like, oh, but I love him these days. But oh man, after watching this, he's my favorite. You ask me today, you ask me tomorrow. Tomorrow it might be Freddy. Today it might be Chucky. It doesn't matter. They're both fucking awesome. Now, when it comes to Freddy in this movie, he's very more a very serious horror icon and a very serious killer in this movie. But compared to like a lot of the other Nightmare on Elm Street movies, is where he starts to get goofy and kind of crack one-liners like Chucky and stuff like that. But in this movie, he's a very serious killer, and I like that. This is probably my favorite version of Freddy because how serious and scary he is. Like the sea of him, like he does like this little hunch, like this little swagger thing because of like the weight of the glove, just like going down like swagger. And like the first, like he's always hidden in the shadows and everything. Like you never get like a clear look at him throughout this entire movie. And I believe, from what I've seen, he only has like 7, 10 minutes of screen time in this movie. Really, like when you first see him, like it's just him like making his glove. Like that's like the whole opening. It's just him just hammering and just blowtorching, and then you're like, what the fuck is he making? And then all of a sudden he puts on this glove and then just goes, and you're like, what the fuck is that thing? Like I really wish I could have seen the audience when this movie first came out when he just makes that. I would have loved to just see somebody go, what the fuck is that? That would have been awesome. That like it's just like that glove. It's iconic. That's probably the most iconic horror weapon like ever, like ever. Besides the kitchen knife. Why do they always use a kitchen knife? That's a good question. I love Freddy Krueger. He's Absolutely iconic. Out of the big three, he is my favorite. I adore Freddy Krueger. He is just so menacing. He's so creepy. He can also be funny when he has to be. He's awesome in this movie. I adore Freddy Krueger. I always will. If you don't like Freddy Krueger, then you're not a horror movie fan. I'm just gonna say it. If you don't like Freddy Krueger, go fuck yourself. What else do you need to know? But there is a problem that I had about Freddy when I was younger. Is like you can see the makeup on him though, but when he lifts up over his chest like that, like when you see his nipple, there's like no burn marks. I don't think that that was meant to be seen like that. Like especially with like on 4K now, like he cuts open like behind his nipple just so like bugs and shit like his. Ugh. And I was like, why is there like no burn marks on him? It's never really bothered me, but it's like did it only burn your face? Did somebody just throw a cocktail at your face? Like, what the fuck? The thing about Freddy Krueger is how Wes Craven came up with the idea. Is apparently when Wes Craven was a kid, or what, or was he in high school? I can't remember. It was like when he was in school. I'm pretty sure he was in high school. Is what I read. And apparently the story goes where he saw a homeless man walking outside. Uh, like around his house, and he was wearing a fedora like Freddy in this movie. He didn't have a red and green sweater on. He had like a trench coat on apparently, and he was watching him. And apparently the homeless man like felt his presence, like felt him staring up at him, and he just goes. And apparently he got so scared he went like left. But then when he kept checking, he was still staring at him and looking at him, and apparently he got nightmares about the motherfucker. I wouldn't blame you. If I saw some homeless guy just staring at me all night, I'd be like, fuck you! That's creepy. Like Les Craven was a fucked up dude. I don't know what it is about this movie, but this movie kind of has like a creepy presence throughout this movie. It's like it's not scary. Like I've never really been scared of this movie, but it has like this weird like creepy feeling throughout this entire movie. Like the boiler room, like where like where he worked, killed, and died, and everything. Like that's why he always goes there because that's basically where his life was. And like you get like this weird like boiler room thing like going on, and it's like what the fuck? It's like you get like this weird creepy presence. And about Freddy, like apparently he killed like over 20 kids in their neighborhood and all that. And it's never really suggested, but there was a scrapped idea that Wes Craven did write Freddy Krueger to be a child molester. But at the time, there was actual child abuse and child abduction, child molestation of the time, and they didn't want to bring that to the big screen or really put it into film. So Wes Craven scrapped that idea and just made him a killer of kids, which is probably worse if anything. But you kind of get a little hint that he's kind of still a pedophile. Like, like the scene where like he's calling Nancy and all that, and like he slips her like a tongue and all that. It's like, ew. Like you kind of get like tiny hints, like when he calls her and he goes, "I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy," and then he like slips her tongue. It's like, ew, dude, what the fuck? I don't know. There's something about this movie that's creepy, like especially that weird ass scene where she's dreaming and then where Nancy's dreaming and goes to check on Rod in the jail cell and she's dreaming, and then all of a sudden she just sees like Tina in like a body bag and she's like spitting out bugs and leeches. It's like, ew, like what the fuck is that? Ugh, I don't know. This movie isn't scary. It's just fuck. It like gives you like nerves. Like it like fucks with your nerves. And it's like if you're like if you hate bugs, don't watch this franchise because there's a bunch of bugs and I hate them. Final positive is the score. Now, a lot of people don't talk about the score in a Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. They usually talk about Jason, Michael, Jaws, sometimes Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I guess. I don't know. But they always talk about like Jason and Michael, and I go, "What about the Nightmare on Elm Street score?" Like I actually went to I was talking to my buddy, he's a good horror movie fan. And I go like we were talking one day and we were talking about horror movie scores. He's like, "Oh man, that Michael Myers score, man, is perfect." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, it's pretty good, but I prefer the Nightmare on Elm Street score." And he just goes, "That score isn't very cool. I never really got into it." I'm like, what crack are you smoking? Like, I love that score. It like matches the tone. Like when they're sleeping, like that little score that they play when they're sleeping. It's like Like when they play that score, like they're sleeping. Like, oh shit, man. It's a very cool score. I listen to it, especially that little like poem lullaby thing, like 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your doors. 5, 6, grab your crucifix. 7, 8, better stay up late. 9, 10, don't you sleep again. Like that? That shit is iconic. People talk about that lullaby, but they don't talk about the score in this movie. Like, why? What's my negatives? I really only have one negative, and it's always bothered me. Even when I was a kid, I'm like, that was a dumb way to end the movie. And that's the ending. What the fuck was that ending? The entire ending of this movie is where they had Wes Craven's original idea was to just have Freddy basically lose all of his powers. Where they even have like a little moment in this movie where Nancy's like, "You got to take away its fear, you got to take away its power." And she does that. That's a brilliant way to take out Freddy because he lives off of fear. That's like his big thing. Is like the more somebody dies, the more fear spreads out through Elm Street, the more people think about him, the more fear he gains. And that's how he lives off their dreams. And they end that with a very cool note. But where it loses me is the Robert Shea ending. Robert Shea wanted some different ending. Wes Craven wanted this ending, so they just took his Wes Craven's ending and Robert Shea's ending, kind of put them together. When Nancy leaves the house, and then all of a sudden it's bright out, sunny, and her mom's alive, her friends are alive. It's like, okay, they came back to life, I guess. But no, and then all of a sudden, the car is like controlled by Freddy, and they're like, "Oh yeah, remember Nancy defeated Freddy? Well, fuck you. We gotta make more movies." And then, oh god, and then Freddy like busts through the door, and then grabs Nancy's mom, pulls her in, and you can if you watch it frame by frame, it's a fucking blow up doll, like a sex doll. It's like, what the fuck was that? And then the movie just ends. Like, what was the point of that ending? You basically just fucked us all over. Like, this movie was nearly perfect if Robert Shea didn't have to be an asshole and be like, "Oh, we need to make more movies. Throw up this ending. Sure, I just want to make more movies. More money. We're always gotta make the Lord of the Rings movies." All in all, guys, horror movie classic. Timeless classic. Absolute classic. It's one of my favorite horror movies. One of my favorite movies. I adore this movie. And maybe on this rewatch, maybe Dream Warriors will overtake the original, but as of right now, this is one of my favorite movies. It's in my top 10 favorite horror movies. This is a movie where if you do not own it, and if you're a horror movie fan, get your ass up, stop everything you're doing, and go out and buy it. What do you guys think about A Nightmare on Elm Street? Have you seen this movie, and what did you think about it? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Let me know in the comments below, and we will talk about it. And if you like this video, like it. If you love to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you will get notified for my latest videos. But until my next video, see you next time.